Hi, welcome to the channel. I am Dean Rod. I am a law school professor and also a law school dean. And in this video, I'm going to try to help you figure out how to understand those codal provisions in the law. Here we go. Welcome back. Again, I am Dean Rod, and in this video I will try to help you figure out how to understand these complicated words and phrases in these laws, these codal provisions. Now remember, I'm not doing the job of your professor or your teacher, but I'm just here to help you so it's easy. When he tries to explain the law, you'll have an easier time to understand what the professor is saying. Okay, my first tip is use the punctuation mark. Don't get me wrong, I'm not asking you to type it or write it down. Of course, in this modern age, in 2025, even in the last 5 years, you can copy and paste the law. Of course, you can research where the law is, get the copy and paste into your word processing program. And what you need to do is, I'll show you the pictures here of graduate doing. You have a long paragraph of that law. For brevity's sake, this law is the Acts of God liability exemption in the Civil Code. And so it's a very long sentence. And if you read it by itself, it's very hard or not so easy to understand. And there's a lot of key phrases. So what you need to do is copy and paste. And then every time you see a punctuation mark, whether it be a comma, a period, a semicolon, press enter. And so the long paragraph will look like sort of a poem. It's written in prose. So here's the breakdown. Let me show you the pictures. So first it says, except in cases specified by the law. So you have already an exception clause. So that's the first line. So you understand this provision is by itself, but it is in relation to others, except in cases expressly specified in the law. And the next line is or, so there's another key phrase. So the first phrase is when it's expressly specified by law. Then the next phrase is when it is otherwise declared by stipulation. So you can see you have idea 1, then idea 2. Now we have idea 3. Or when the nature of the obligation requires the assumption of risks. So what the law is telling you now are 3 instances, 3 scenarios where the law of acts of God will apply. But because it is preceded by the word except, meaning the acts of God do not apply to in cases expressly specified in the law, or when it's otherwise declared by stipulation, or when the nature of the obligation requires the assumption of risks. Those are the 3 exceptions. If it's not those 3, then the law gives us a declaration stating no person shall be responsible for those events. So the law says no one is responsible. For what? For those events. What events? Here we go, breaking it down. Which could not be foreseen. So the events which could not have been foreseen. And then there's another phrase or another idea says, which though foreseen were inevitable. See? So if you take it line by line, so I'll show you before and I'll show you after. If you read it that way and you understand that there's a phrase by idea, it'll be easier for you to understand at the very least. Of course, when you are 4th-year law students or even lawyers, you don't need to do this. But these are for people who have a difficult time in understanding codal provisions. Now, the next tip I will give you is that you have to remember every time you read the law or a provision of the law or article or section of the law, you have to understand that what it is trying to do. Each codal provision is trying to tell us something. It's either giving us a rule or policy, or it is giving us a command, or it is giving us a consequence for violating such provision of law. Meaning if you don't follow what the law says, you don't follow the command, it'll give us a consequence. Those are usually penal provisions or criminal laws. Right? Let me give an example of this tip, how it works out. So this is Article 172.2 of the Intellectual Property Code regarding copyright. So the first policy, the first idea, the first line says, works are protected from the sole fact of their creation. So that's the policy. Works are protected, copyrighted works, by the way, are protected from the sole fact of their creation, which means as long as the fact of creation can be proven or presented, protection starts from that moment of creation. Okay, what is the next line in the law? It says there, irrespective of their mode or form, meaning it doesn't matter what it is, the mode or the form, but it must be expressed. So it says here, irrespective of their mode or form of expression, as you can see. So it says here, mode or form of what? Of expression. So how the work is expressed, but meaning it has to be in a mode or form when they are expressed. So they are protected from their fact of creation in whatever form or mode they are, as long as it is expressed. What else? What does the law say? Irrespective of their mode or form expression, as well as so you have to break it down. Irrespective of their mode or form of expression, number one. Irrespective of their content, meaning, of course, what content means. Irrespective of their quality, and irrespective of their purpose. You can see I'm repeating the word irrespective, but it doesn't say it in the law, but that's how you understand it. Because it gives you a series based on the modifier irrespective. So that's how you understand the law. You break it down into its simplest components, either by understanding key phrases. And of course, this law, Article 172 of the IP Code, gives us a policy, what the law states. It's the policy that works are protected from the sole fact of their creation. What else? They are protected irrespective of their mode or form of expression. They are protected irrespective of their content, and they are respected irrespective of their purpose. So that's how you understand the law. You're sort of repeating the first phrase to understand the multiple phrases, the multiple punctuation marks, if you can, which is the first step. All right. Another example of that tip of provisions having a policy. This one is a provision with a consequence. Okay, this is part of obligations as contracts, and this is under the general rules of obligations. So it says here in Article 1170, those who are in the performance or of their obligations. Okay, that's the first key phrase. They are doing, performing, conducting what they promised, their obligation, meaning they are doing, giving, or not doing their obligation. So those who are in the performance of their obligation. So this provision of law 1170 is telling us what happens to those doing their obligations. Now, those who are doing their obligations, those who are guilty, while performing your obligation, you are found guilty. What does that say? When the word guilty comes out, it means that there is a finding of guilt by a competent court. So, if you're doing something and you are guilty of, what's the first one? What's the first idea? What's the first phrase? They are guilty of fraud. So, those who are in the performance obligations, those that are guilty of fraud or negligence. So that's the first idea. First idea is fraud. The next one is negligence. So either your first is guilty of fraud, means you cheated in a way. Though then the second one is those who are guilty. You notice I repeated the first phrase. Those who are guilty of negligence, meaning you did not do the proper precaution, you didn't do the proper diligence in performing the obligations. Or those who are guilty, the third one, of delay. So the first one is guilty, those guilty of fraud, those guilty of negligence, those guilty of delay. And the fourth one, those who are doing it in the manner in contravention thereof, meaning it was done, it was performed not the way they agreed to, not the way it's supposed to be. So there are 4 instances that the law says if you are guilty while performing your obligations of guilty of fraud, negligence, delay or different contravention or different manner, what's the law say? What is the consequence for that? They are liable for damages. So that's how I hope you understand. That's how you break down the law. If it is read as a whole sentence, it might be confusing. But if you break it down or broke it down like what I did, it'll be easier to understand. Hopefully, it is easier to understand. So every time you see a elongated sentence, think of it in phrases. Think of it as ideas and you split them up. All right? Now, the third tip I will give you in trying to understand the code of provisions of the law is remember your basic elementary English. Subject, verb, verb, predicate, subject, person. Each sentence, each provision of law is basically a sentence. So if you break down the sentence in who is the subject of that law, who is the subject of that sentence, what is the verb of that sentence, and what is the predicate of that sentence. So then you can basically understand who this law is speaking about, who this law is for, and what the law is about. So again, remember your basic elementary English, subject, verb, predicate. Once you break down a long sentence like that, you will be able to understand who the law is for, what this law is about, and what happens in that particular provision of law. So again, remember your elementary English. Now, the fourth tip that I'll give you so it be easier for you to understand these code of provisions is that they are building blocks. Meaning, now we have to understand provisions of the law put together. All right? Meaning, sometimes you have a law that's a lot of articles or a lot of sections. You have to understand that in the beginning of the law, in the beginning of that the first parts of the law, they're the building blocks, right? For example, I'm sure most college students and law students will understand that in obligations and contract, it all begins with obligations are to do, to give, or not to do. Or let me break it down. It'll make it easier. It is to give, to do, or not to do. Therefore, it all boils down to those three obligations under the law. And the succeeding provisions in obligations contracts are based on the building block of the obligations of three basic obligations under the law. Meaning, it is to give, to do, or not to do. So you must understand when you read, let's say, obligations contracts. I actually have a couple of videos explaining that more specifically. I'll give the links down below. It all boils down to those building blocks. So when you see a long law, whatever it be, the corporation code, the insurance code, even the revised penal code, the first few provisions are the building blocks of the whole law. So you have to understand that the beginning of the law is usually the basic fundamentals of that particular law. That's why obligations and contracts first dealt with what are obligations. They are the juridical necessity to give, to do, or not to do, and everything else is derived from that, right? Okay, the fifth tip I will give you to help you understand the laws is that when you read the law, you have to basically understand there's a principle behind laws. And you have to have a good faith belief that that principle exists. That's the principle that all laws are good-natured. They are made for the betterment of man and society. So you have, of course, there's a general principle that when Congress or the House of Representatives and the Senate make a law, it is for the good of society. Whether the laws are penal in nature, meaning they are giving criminal penalties for those who violate the law, so it's telling us what not to do, versus telling us these are, like for copyright law, these are what protections are. This is how works are protected and what the government will do to help artists and in other people to protect their work. Then again, you have to remember that when these laws are written, you have think back in your head, why are these laws here? They're to help us in our society, help us do our work, help us build a better country. I know I sound sappy, but if you have that belief when you understand the law, then you won't think, why is this law here? We don't need this law. It's not like algebra where you will not use it. Well, I just had my class the other day in succession, and we actually used algebra. So to say that you won't need algebra in your life future, now you do. Okay, guys, I hope you picked up something. And remember, it's not what you know, it's what they don't know. Hi, please do me a favor and smash that like button. It'll help me a lot and it will trigger the YouTube algorithm. Now, if you have not yet, please subscribe to my channel. If you don't, my dog will eat this exam booklet and that student has to repeat his final exam again.